Welcome back to the 2-Minute Warning. Today I'm looking at the New York Jets and talking about what I believe they should do with the number 2 overall pick in the NFL draft. But before getting into that topic, question for those of you watching who are NFL fans and New York Jets fans, comment down below who your favorite New York Jet player is all time in franchise history, and I will reveal who my favorite is at the end. But getting into this topic, number 2 overall, and you have another first round pick that you got from the Jamal Adams trade with the Seattle Seahawks. Looking at the Jets right now, they had, I believe, the second most cap space in NFL free agency before at the start of it. I still think right now they might even have the most because they haven't spent absolutely everything, but they did get a couple of decent accusations in NFL free agency. Corey Davis is probably the biggest name. They added Carl Lawson, and they re-signed Marcus May, just to name a few. So they're starting to get somewhere, but really, this team is nowhere complete. Robert Saleh, the new head coach, the former defensive coordinator for the 49ers, is going to have a whole team to himself. We're going to see how he runs it. But at number 2 overall, there is a lot of assumption and speculation that they will be moving off to Sam Darnold and drafting Zach Wilson from BYU at number 2 overall, which I can't really argue with. In my opinion, that is a good move. If you're your NFL team, you're the New York Jets, and you see Sam Darnold and you just know, no matter if you give him the receivers, you give him the offensive line, you give him all the offensive weapons, and you just think he still does not have the it factor, you still don't think he has the talent to be your franchise guy, cut your losses and move on to Zach Wilson if you truly think Sam Darnold is not it, and you truly think Zach Wilson is it. He's a top prospect, probably be number 1 overall in most drafts if it weren't for this generational talent in Trevor Lawrence. So if you believe in Zach Wilson and you just know Sam Darnold is not going to cut it, go for that move. But in my opinion, Sam Darnold just hasn't really gotten the opportunity to show what he truly has. Yes, he's 3 years in, but he has had a Adam Gase head coach who is god-awful. He lost his job. He hasn't had any receiving help. He hasn't had a great running back. I mean, he gave him Frank Gore, and his offensive line has been awful, and his defense is not great either. They're giving up umpteen amount of points every single game, so Sam Darnold's always forced to air it out to try and keep it competitive. And really, I just don't think Sam Darnold has been fairly evaluated. And I know there's lots of tape, lots of film, lots of games out there where Sam Darnold looks like an absolute scrub. He doesn't look like a starter, and I get that. But I just think, given the situation he is in, he is not really fairly evaluated. To me, if you put him on a Cleveland Browns where Baker Mayfield is surrounded by a fortress of the greatest offensive line in the NFL, a number 1 backfield in the NFL with Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt and great receivers and OBJ, Jarvis Landry, Austin Hooper, David Njoku, I think Sam Darnold could do just as good as Baker Mayfield, and I truly believe that. Baker Mayfield, not to hate on him, and I do think Baker is a good quarterback. I do think the fortress around him definitely ups his game. Sam Darnold, the garbage around him definitely brings his game down, so I do think they should give him another shot. And at number 2 overall, in my opinion, the best option is either go Penei Sewell, who to a lot of people will be a for sure Hall of Famer. He is arguably the best offensive lineman in the NFL draft, either him or Rashawn Slater, but Penei Sewell is probably the top guy, or Kyle Pitts if you're strictly looking at drafting number 2 overall. In my opinion, they should trade back, but if they're looking at number 2 overall and they stick with Sam Darnold, I say they should go with Penei Sewell to give Sam Darnold the protection he deserves, or get Kyle Pitts, who's probably the best prospect outside of the quarterback position in pure talent, in my opinion. Yeah, you got decent receivers now, especially with Corey Davis. You got Jamison Crowder, and you do have a decent tight end with Chris Herndon, and you signed Tyler Kroft, and there's Ryan Griffin. That tight end chart has plenty of depth, but none of those guys can touch Kyle Pitts. He's a top prospect coming out, and I truly think they should consider him. But my overall assumption, if it was up to me, if I was running the New York Jets, which I'm not, and Joe Douglas is a GM, even if I had a word to his ear, I would say trade back, get a lot of draft capital, even more than you have now, possibly have 3 first-round picks. Look at a team like the Washington football team or the Chicago Bears or the Carolina Panthers, who just aren't really happy and excited with their quarterback situation, and work out a trade that has them trading up and you trading back and getting more draft capital, because I think Sam Darnold can be the answer if you give him the right weapons around him. I'm not saying, obviously, any quarterback can look good when you give him the absolute best player at every position on offense. I get that, but I do think Sam Darnold needs a little bit more help. And if you could trade back and get a little bit more draft capital, end up with 3 first-round picks somehow, I seriously think Sam Darnold and the Jets could capitalize off what you could get there versus just one more top tier guy in Penei Sewell. I think Sam Darnold would much rather, there's Penei Sewell, who the Jets could get for him at number 2 overall, or they could trade back and still get a Rashawn Slater, and then you have another first-round pick to get, a fourth-best receiver to add to this receiving core. I think Sam Darnold and the Jets were better off getting him more weapons versus the very top-tier weapon in Penei Sewell. Yes, I know you want the best of the best, but the Jets need absolutely everything, in my opinion. You can't just draft one player and this team is perfectly fixed. Even if you draft Zach Wilson and move off my idea of keeping Sam Darnold, this Jets team will not be fixed by any means. There's a lot of holes. Yeah, there's some foundation there, like I said, in Corey Davis, Jamison Crowder, Chris Herndon, and then on defense you got Carl Lawson and Quentin Williams and CJ Mosley and LaMarcus Joyner and Marcus May. There is a foundation there. They're not playing with absolute nobodies, but still there's a lot of holes and there's a lot of gaps that need to be fixed. In the NFL draft is where they could fix it. They still got a decent amount of money in NFL free agency. If they're looking at another receiver such as T.Y. Hilton or a corner like Richard Sherman, where you can evaluate things differently, or if you pick up an extra offensive line or an extra pass rusher, Melvin Ingram is still out there. There's a lot of NFL free agency left to go. I know the top dogs still aren't there, but there are some names there that the Jets should be looking at, and this will kind of change how they will evaluate the number 2 pick they have in the NFL draft. To me, what will happen is I think they'll draft Zach Wilson. I think they will move off Sam Darnold or keep both and just have them battle for the number 2 spot. What I want to happen is them to trade back with the Panthers or with the Washington or with the Chicago, a team that is just not set on their guy, and accumulate more draft capital and get a bunch of depth and a bunch of talent to help out Sam Darnold. One extra piece on offense is not going to save him in this team. They need a lot, and therefore I think they should consider trading back and acquiring a lot of assets. Or if they're sticking with Sam Darnold at number 2 overall and you're not trading back, you have to go with Kyle Pitts so Sam Darnold has an absolute monster of a weapon, or give him Penei Sewell, who Sam Darnold has an absolute monster of protection. Either way, whatever they do at number 2 overall, to me, it has to be something on the offense, whether it be Zach Wilson, quarterback, whether it be protection of Penei Sewell, whether it be Kyle Pitts as a receiving weapon. You have to focus on this offense. Not that the defense is perfect by any means, but I do think the defense, you have a little bit more of a foundation there, and you need to figure out the quarterback position and whether or not Sam Darnold is your guy. To me, I still believe in him. I think they should give him one more year. Yeah, I know it's been 3 years to show if he has anything, but I still think when you have an awful head coach, a fossil of a running back at Frank Gore in this past year, Le'Veon Bell, who his coach never liked, and a receiving core that just isn't it, Sam Darnold has not been given the right chance to really see what he has. We will have to see. I think Robert Saleh can hopefully turn him around, but we will have to see it in total. I think they will move on to Zach Wilson. But like I said, there's a lot of NFL free agency left to see what they do. The NFL draft, that could change. That no matter how many conspiracy theories I come up with, we won't know until draft night, until the trade happens, or until the pick happens. No one knows. I'm excited to see it. And I think the Jets, this is a big year they need to capitalize off of. You got the number 2 pick. You got an extra first rounder. Either way, even if it's not the move I want and you decide to go with Zach Wilson, just make something happen and maybe trade Sam Darnold and then get assets that way. Either way, New York Jets, you're given an opportunity to turn your franchise around. No one expects you to win this division next year. No one expects you to even go 500, but you need to see improvement this year, or the franchise is just becoming, I don't want to say a joke, but it's definitely not the top tier NFL franchise that people respect by any means. This is a year they're given a chance to capitalize with cap space and with draft capital, and they need to execute, or else it's just not going to look good, and we're going to see more guys get fired, more coaches replaced, a new GM come in, quarterbacks being backup quarterbacks. We're going to see a lot of changes unless this team could get things turned around. Like I said, they don't have to make the playoffs, but we need improvement 100%. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. What do you think the Jets should do at number 2 overall? Again, my thesis is keeping Sam Darnold and trading back and acquiring more draft capital for the future to build around him, but we will have to see. I think they're going to go with Zach Wilson from BYU, but like I said, we won't know the day of. But comment down below what you think they will do and what you want them to do. 2 different answers, and of course, comment your favorite Jets player. Mine would have to be, it's hard to go against Revis Island, one of the best cornerbacks of all time and one of the Jets' best franchise players of all time. Like I said, comment down below what you think, guys. Thanks for watching. 2 in the morning.